applications with SAP and Google. I am Damien Johnson. I've been an architect with what we call the Google Business Unit within SAP since last September. So we've established a good working partnership along with a go-to-market partnership. And today's goal is hopefully to cover everything that's top of mind with everyone from our customers as well as our partner community. And before I start anything, I have to give my safe harbor statement, because I do have some future forward-facing documentation in there and such. But beyond that, let's see, this is what we're going to endeavor to cover. We have a lot to cover in the 50 minutes or so, and I'm going to try to see if I can leave time for Q&A. I'm going to go through the current enterprise drivers, i.e. what is the requirement out in the business from our customers that drives this kind of innovation. We're going to look at the intelligent suite or intelligent enterprise architecture, how SAP brings those components together, and then the next point being how we look at the technical footprint on how that intelligent enterprise functions within the GCP framework and makes use of GCP services. And then lastly, we're going to look at some example use cases. And again, some of these are productized, some are prototypes that we've been developing with our customers along these lines. So feel free to think of some questions. So like I said, I don't think we've got time to do interactive sessions. We're going to have one afterwards. So what do we already know? I think from the point of view of that artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT, instant insights, they're all requirements of the business world as well as the consumer world nowadays. The other aspect is that it's taken for granted or expected that the embedded machine learning and analytics needs to provide that built-in guidance or even automation at the enterprise level. And then the last one is the conversational applications. It's the new experience, new user experience. So I always said, does that mean that all the UX designers are out of work now? I don't think so. But generally, it's the way to go forward, and that's something we're going to also discuss, how SAP and Google are working together to provide that into the enterprise world, i.e. taking the Google Home experience into the enterprise itself. So when I talk about the intelligent enterprise or the intelligent world, I like to go back a couple of years and talk about this. I won't tell you where I started on this little timeline. You can just guess, but it is quite far back. But it is on there, though, so that's also good. We've gone through these many iterations, as you can see. At the top, you see all the kind of traditional architectural frameworks that started off from the mainframe, client server, to go to cloud, mobile, etc. And now what we internally call the intelligent technology server area. The ones below that is kind of interesting to note as well. Forget the technology. Look at the enabling technologies there. As you can see, everybody's familiar with those things. And I remember the days of when I was in, when I started in this computer industry back in the 86s and late into the 90s, you went to work and you actually had the latest technology, because I had an IBM XT to make use of with Lotus 123. And all I had in the home was a VIC-20 home computer. And then you come to the modern day and it's kind of switched. You're finding that the consumer has the latest tech and the enterprise is now the laggard. So that's where we're looking at in terms of how we're trying to bring the intelligent technologies to bring it all the way down into the customer value creation. As you can see here, we want to be about the intelligent enterprise, meaning that it's beyond just automation. It's beyond just that what we call the digital transformation and making everything in real time. So look at this, and like I say, tell me something new. One of the things I always like to talk about is the fact that the core back-end systems are now engaging at the edge. This gentleman asked me, am I going to be talking about CRM and supply chain and ERP? Yes. The big difference nowadays is it's not in the back office, it's in the front office now. Actually, it's beyond the front office. It's directly in the consumer's hands most of the time. The other aspects of this I talk about is the rate of, the way you can redefine or refactor the back end is inversely proportional to the complexity. And back end systems are complex. So that's where the conundrum is really sits there. And then lastly, expectations and experience matter. Going back to that consumer expectations being brought into the enterprise. Obviously, actually, it's nothing new, but it's worth restating that because in terms of what we're trying to do here is to kind of like make all of these things, which are impediments, and turn them into opportunities of how we actually now make use of these technologies to empower the business. So with that, this slide is a very short summary of how SAP looks at the Intelligent Suite or Intelligent Enterprise. It's, you may be familiar with the classic scenarios of bimodal IT, where you have the back office functions, and then you have the accelerating innovation layer. So what I like to refer to this is really looking at you've got the back office capabilities on how to steer the company, how to run your company, and those are traditional ERP. That's obviously the heart and soul of, or the DNA from SAP from 40 years of developing hardcore back-end course enterprise applications. The trick is now to pivot from all that information and make it from consumer-facing, and going more into the other right-hand side of the equation, i.e. engaging at the edge and making the innovations happen in a much faster cycle. So how does SAP look at doing these things? So it's a bit of an eye chart. It's just to show the breadth and depth of the solutions that SAP brings to the table. So this is the traditional capabilities from all the way from the customer experience through manufacturing, people engagement, and spend management. So I think I'm assuming a fair number of you are going to go back to the hotel or Friday, if you're a procrastinator like me, and do your expenses on Concur. Now, so this is we cover a full spectrum of interactions within the enterprise application space. And the big difference from our point of view is the fact that we've seen the need for all of this to work seamlessly together, to create that end-to-end flow. And as you can see down here, we target it or call it as the Intelligent Suite. But in order to have a fully functioning Intelligent Suite, we have to provide those integrations. We have to provide the master data and orchestration. And the business objects there is not business objects, the analytics. It's business objects, meaning the business object. I am a business partner. You're an employee. A sales order is a business object. Because we're going to talk about how in the intelligent enterprise, you're going to actually invoke and consume business services derived from those business objects. The thing that I'm going to now, if we look at this, to go on about the Intelligent Suite, well, what's the underlying constituents that make up the Intelligent Suite? So you can see here the top layer, which is all those business solutions that I explained. Some are traditional on-prem scenarios, what we call our digital core, that started life back as an ERP system, is now transformed into the main component called S/4HANA. S/4HANA obviously runs on-prem, as we have a cloud version as well. And just like our customers, they're running that version in the cloud on IaaS providers such as Google Cloud Platform, which is now fully certified for those solutions, along with all the other line of business solutions that are traditionally have been more SaaS-based. How does this all become kind of like cohesively into the Intelligent Suite? As you can see here, there's a lot of technologies involved in the middle there. The traditional stuff that the gentleman asked about, is it all about machine learning? Yes, it's all about machine learning. Is it about conversational AI? Yes. Is it about real-time analytics and data-driven decision-making? All of that, yes. But that's a bucket of technologies. And a bucket of technologies that is evolving and developing very, very rapidly. And as I mentioned before, the problem with enterprise applications is, generally speaking, is the ability to pivot very quickly. It takes a lot of time because there's an intrinsic built-in interdependencies of business processes. It's not easy to just change it on the fly here because that change can have a tremendous ripple effect down there. So the problem is, how do you now make use of the innovative technologies in the context of that enterprise applications? And that's where we're really looking at leveraging that digital platform. So, as I mentioned, that's really the front side of the Intelligent Suite. Now, if we look at this in an architectural component style, the core of enabling that from SAP's point of view for our customers is a thing called SAP Cloud Platform. So this is the core engine that enables the brokering of our enterprise capabilities into the world of digital services, be it from GCP services or anybody else's services for that matter. But based on the, obviously from my point of view, as you can see from my T-shirt, I have a slight bias in the way I'm working. Obviously, I'm working with the Google Cloud teams in terms of integrating their technology into the business functions within the SAP business applications. The 4 areas that you can see here, the enterprise or the connected enterprise scenario, that's the traditional business suite components I just talked about. Insight-driven activities. So as part of SAP, as I mentioned, the core enabling technology that we developed called SAP Hana, which provides that in-memory database that powers our solutions, provides both analytical and transactional in the one instance. So the traditional way of doing business of an OLTP, moving the data out and doing analysis, is really gone away from the SAP world in the operational world for our customers. And that's where we're talking about that. The business ready, and so again, business ready from the point of view is like, is it ready for consumption? And can the business users have that consumer grade interface again, rather than the green screens that they were used to? And on the top right, the native cloud. Of course, this is all about the traditional stuff that comes to mind when you're talking about native cloud, containerization, web scale, and all of the other things along with it. At that point, I'm not really going to get too much into it because the SAP aspects about cloud native is related to the SAP-centric development. I'm not going to say that you need to go and build the next greatest web app, consumer app on our platform versus Google's platform, because that's not what it's designed for. You can absolutely do it, but the benefit really comes when you're looking at using the two in the enterprise context. So this is just another kind of quick a list of the specific functions and capabilities that are behind these areas. And what we're going to be talking about really today is really along the lines of the connections aspects on the left-hand side. As I mentioned, it's the connected enterprise at the end of the day. Your apps, our customers, partners' apps are going to be all about running somewhat disconnected mode, but fully integrated mode. It's the fact that it's got to be loosely coupled is the way to go forward. And one of the key things that everybody has to make sure is, when you're talking about these intelligent enterprise apps, is synchronization and usage of the data. So the master data governance is it's absolutely important. And secondly, the aspects about the governance framework. The one thing that everybody seems to kind of like pass on is that we have all these beautiful machine learning algorithms making decisions. And one thing that is required in the enterprise world is an audit trail. Why was that action taken? Now, that's something that SAP, as an enterprise applications vendor, have at their heart and soul. The fact that we audit everything. We can find out why did this number become this number, the reason behind it. Now, think of this and extrapolate this to, you've got 500 algorithms running and making decisions and changes. So now knowing what the decision of this algorithm that was made should be dependent upon whatever constraints it used at the time of making that decision. It is not like, it's not like an end user clicking a button now. We need to have the context. So when we look at enterprise applications using artificial intelligence and machine learning, the governance framework becomes very important as well. These are, at the high level, the capabilities built inside the SAP Cloud Platform. And when you're looking at this, you're thinking, well, yeah, okay, I got all of these in my native GCP components as well. And some of them are absolutely complementary and have overlaps. Some are, I would say, even competitive, straight out of the box. But it's the fact that what we talk about as an enabling technology to power the business applications is how you leverage these capabilities together with the GCP services. Like I said, I'm going to go into the use cases, but this is an important aspect of enabling the enterprise apps into the new era, because, as I mentioned before, it is very difficult to turn every single enterprise applications into 10,000 microservices because of the huge interdependencies built into the process. From a procure-to-pay process, there are thousands of dependencies just inside it, let alone outside it. So can we now extend and make use of the procure-to-pay, as a business unit, as a function? Yes. It's called like procurement in the cloud, like we have with Ariba. But when you if you try to now decompose each of those individually, it becomes harder and harder because of the interdependencies that you have there. But our goal here is really to see how this platform can broker that new innovation, the new technology at the lowest level, whilst maintaining the business integrity of the process itself. And that's why we have created a whole slew of use cases, what we call the way that we envision, and I'm saying we envision, because it's the way that we designed it, doesn't mean that our customers and our partners really end up making use of it that way, because once somebody's given a particular tool, they can make it do anything they want. One of the first use cases is, as I mentioned, experience and user interface matters nowadays. The green screen is not the way to go. So one of the key things that we also did is power, as part of our cloud platform, is this thing called SAP Fiori Cloud, which allows you to create basically it's an HTML5 based GUI framework that front ends all the business transactions. Now, I'm working with Google as one of our customers, and you can imagine Google they have some expectations on UI, and I believe they have some experience in designing UI. So they're like, this is great, Damien, but we use this system. It's Angular. And we're like, okay, so you don't like our cool new front screens or UI screens? You want to use your own and develop yours. Guess what? The way that we've architected this and brokered it is allowing them to do that. So they're actually implementing things that, they were like, there's the skin that you gave me, forget that. Here's my Angular-based, Java Angular-based skin. I'm going to front-end it to the business processes. So all of these things that we did to just enable and start to expose things that are being reused by our partners and customers. The other part of this framework is the extensions. In the traditional ERP world, not just SAP, you had to basically modify the core code. And that got rolled out with a version upgrade as new capabilities came in. That was the pain that most CIOs, CTOs, as well as business leaders lived through as part of the upgrade process. And what ended up happening was a lot of the time, people were just upgrading the technical aspects to stay current on support, but I haven't really updated any of my business processes. So even though I have got a current system, I'm still running it as of 10 years ago. So that's one of the problems that were there. And one of the frameworks that we've developed for Cloud Platform is to get yourself out of that framework. I mentioned the bimodal IT concept. Back office functions, those business services, business objects are there to be served up. But how you now consume and extend that is done natively through what we call the SAP Cloud Platform. And that's one of the use cases that it's predominantly used by our customers as well as our partners. This other one here, this is an interesting one because I can actually say we got there first to Google because we actually developed and realized that API management is key to our need for consuming the business applications and developing what we call the business services in the end of the day. We OEM'd into our platform Apogee. So Apogee is our API management tool, which is obviously now the Google-owned API management tool. And the reason for doing that, as they realize this also, is the fact that we need to have this governed, as I mentioned, API structure into our back-end services. And again, this becomes one of the key reasons we use this mechanism to power the intelligent enterprises, because as developers, as partners, I don't expect you to know what it takes to create a purchase order and the gyrations that you need to go through necessarily in the purchase order creation process, or what the business, the customer has defined as mandatory fields, mandatory process requirements, what workflows get triggered on the backflow. All of those things are actually configured and managed within SAP, but as a front, from the point of view of developing or extending those apps, just give me a RESTful service that says I can do an add mode into a REST service, and that's all you need to do. And you can use the JSON-based package or whether it's XML. That's the beauty of what we've done here, is the fact that the complexity of the back is now really hidden, or we provide a facade for you to consume the back-end business functions. The other part of this is the IoT and the extensions framework. This obviously is built natively into the SAP world because SAP, as I mentioned, as business as a predominant business applications provider, hundreds of our customers, probably thousands of our customers, have extensive IoT needs. So we've developed our own application suite capabilities built into the Hana Cloud, the SAP Cloud platform. Now, in the GCP world, I think I was just talking to a developer across the road. They were using the GCP IoT core. Now, the question came to me was like, can you integrate that with our IoT capabilities? Because they want to now extend and make use of our enterprise asset management. Because within the IoT framework is not the simple part is not, I shouldn't say simple, but the capture of IoT events by itself is half the story. It's where did it come from, what action needs to be taken from it. All of that information is, guess what? It's in our enterprise asset management environment. So the integration of GCP IoT core into Cloud Platform IoT is absolutely feasible because we've got a messaging bus. We can integrate into PubSub as the messaging MQTT-based message bus that the IoT core uses. Last one here, as I said, this is the one I'm kind of like, You have the options of doing all of this. This is just to show that from the SAP point of view, we have the flexibility for you to develop cloud-native applications in a microservices-based architecture because we're using the Cloud Foundry model. So all of the runtimes and languages available from the Cloud Foundry framework is available natively. The benefit for this is, again, as I mentioned, is you have the flexibility now to develop brand new applications that extend the CRM, that extend the supply chain, using the full-blown services architecture that you're familiar with, that's web native or cloud native, but still invoke and update the back-end processes. Because at the end of the day, I mean, I'm waiting for the day that I can truly say that every single S/4HANA ERP service is a business service and it's delivered as a microservice. That is going to be very difficult, I might believe, because there's a lot of dependencies and it's more efficient to run it the way we're doing it right now. This one is just to give you an idea of what I would consider to be, I don't want to say a reference architecture, but because I don't capture every single scenario. But what this does show is, this is something that our customers are already doing, which is running S4 and other business on-premise applications on HANA in GCP. As you saw, the couple of announcements that came out this year, Google is caught up with the competition and already has 4 terabyte HANA, virtual HANA systems available. They're also now leading the pack in terms of providing Optane chipsets supported in for HANA as well. The other part about this is also the SAP Cloud Platform that I mentioned, certified to run on GCP as well. So not only is the business applications now running on GCP, our platform is running on GCP. And over here, obviously, you have the native GCP services so that everybody is making use of as a developer out there. And this is where the interesting parts happen. I think this is where all the interest that you just talked about as this intelligent application comes to the forefront. I did that, and I did this like this, just show you the interactions, right? So at the end of the day, a couple of developers came up to me and says, well, can't I just write my service straight into SAP? And as you know, in any world, given enough time and resources, yes, you can. But it's a question of why would you do that, right? Because at the end of the day, if the things that we have going directly, as you can see, into S4 and HANA are things related to the data aspects, because you want to be able to pull into BigQuery data directly from the SAP systems. And that's what we've supported as part of our capabilities with our partnership. But if you look at the rest of it, more of the interactions at the business tier, the easiest way to do is to have it brokered through the SAP, what we call the Cloud Platform services. Why? Because the SCP services understands everything SAP-centric. And as much as we like to say that I've got that simple RESTful service, there are implications on still putting that PO in, and then the fact that you now have to look at the contract information, things like that. There are very SAP-centric scenarios hidden behind there in the business services function. So rather than doing an update directly over to on that side and then worrying about having to orchestrate all of those updates, we've already done the orchestration at this tier. So from an external consumption of services, that's the path to go, because that brokers out and allows you to now make use of those technologies and capabilities. As a case in point, I'm going to go into details later on. Some of the AI capabilities from here, we actually had a session yesterday, talked about the fact our Deloitte as a partner has created a invoice entry screen leveraging the AI capabilities from the GCP stack, right? It brokers in, calls in the necessary Fiori OData service and consumes it and puts the invoice in. So it's mimicking. Oh, sorry. Oops, sorry. That's my IT, I'm afraid. I can't change that timeout session. Security. Sorry, what was it? That was what you were telling me. Sorry. Anyway, so where was I? So that's the reason why we're looking at the brokering aspects of cloud platform. And then if I get down into the technical architecture, what I did, I got a big caveat here. It's conceptual design scenarios only, right? Because this has some future scenarios, but this is to give an overview of how the actual brokering and consumption services can really operate. Because it's got things like I didn't even put in the cloud. It's IoT core on GCP that's in there. But things such as all the machine learning, the Vision API and all of those things. I'm going to talk about building a new app. All of these capabilities that come from the Google Cloud Platform. All of the big data stuff over there on the left-hand side, right? And then also some of the core infrastructure components, such as the Kubernetes and the containerization, and as well as the compute engines. If you look at this, the way that it fits together is to identify the areas where the connections occur. So the big data scenarios, guess what? We have a component as part of the cloud platform. It's called Data Hub. It's been certified. We're going to get into the details here. That works hand in hand with BigQuery and Dataproc and other data platforms on GCP. What does it do? It brokers that service directly into the business applications. On the integration side, so Cloud PubSub is the way to go from most integration scenarios in the GCP world. We've got the ways of integrating into that at the messaging layer. We have enterprise messaging built into Cloud Platform. We actually OEM Solus as our PubSub framework inside us. But we also have native integration services, as I said. So good old-fashioned RESTful services. I shouldn't say. Yeah, I guess. RESTful is old-fashioned now. Whatever the next wave comes in. But SOAP-based web services, etc. They're all provided, and we have thousands, as you probably know. We have these things called inside SAP called. Did they get shorter? From the point of view of different services invoking our business functions, they can now be exposed, consumed through this layer. We have the aspects of the Copilot. So one of the things that I want to talk about also is I've shown it here with the G Suite integrations. We actually for our Sapphire session in May, we announced and showed how we've integrated Sheets, the first wave, into the SAP applications. Now the reason why I said this is we're trying to have a single thread through to the integration scenarios. So that's the way we're looking at it. And you can see all the here on the extends to the SAP S4 and the line of business. I.e., if we're going to create a conversational bot, we don't want to create one for this application, one for that application, one for that application. More than development, it's the fact that when we're looking at the conversational aspects, it has to retain the business context. So as the conversation flows through, it can start off in our C4C, C4HANA hybrid or customer engagement scenario, and could theoretically end up in a finance conversation in our finance system related to billing inquiries. So because of that, we want to maintain that context, and that's why we have what we call the SAP Copilot, which now makes use of those machine learning capabilities from our Leonardo functions, and those same Leonardo functions is what can now actually integrate into all the Google Brain and ML and CMLE functions and TensorFlow. So that's to give you a high-level view of the technical scenarios that it comes together. And so what I wanted to do is talk about a little bit more about what we've done in concrete terms. Everybody knows it's all about the data, the key areas of govern, manage, and enrich and consume. So at the end of the day, I wanted to explain something I had in the previous slide. So when we look at the consume and manage aspects and enrich, this is a scenario that's now it's been released and it's working. This is a way that SAP S/4HANA can now basically have an interconnects with Google BigQuery, as well as PubSub frameworks, as well as GCP and machine learning frameworks via the cloud storage. So in here is SAP Data Hub, which manages the flow of data and orchestrates that. That Data Hub also now not only just pushes data into and reads from and manages the overall orchestration, but theoretically, if you're a GCP user and have already made use of extensive data flows, guess what? It's a question of my previous diagram I showed you. It's about reuse. So again, the core principle here is making sure that the technologies available in GCP are now fully integrated into the business functions of SAP. Because one thing you don't want to do in SAP, especially and in general in ERP, enterprise applications, is just do database updates. It's got to be at the application logic layer. The other things that's key importance is experience and ease of use, as I mentioned. So from the SAP world, we've basically released and have available key technologies that allows you to do all of these things, from the personas aspects for people, and then the technology. As I mentioned, the machine learning libraries, as well as a REST-based API. This is what the Google team is reskinning via the REST-based APIs into the business functions that we've exposed. As well as on the business side, obviously the integrations I mentioned about the G Suite, as well as the tighter integrations of the G Suite through those Copilot functions. We have this is probably not relevant for GCPers in the crowd, but this is part of the way the whole suite of solution sets that comes along for the ride as part of the SAP Cloud platform to allow you to do things. This is where a lot of the things I mentioned before, there might be an overlap within the specific functions that you might be using GCP to do. But again, this is the SAP-centric view, but the point is that you can now broker these services into those external GCP services without having to relearn, or not relearn, learn the intricacies of the SAP context. The last one is obviously that's relevant for most of the people, these attendees here, is looking at the way we look at machine learning and artificial intelligence. The key difference from SAP's world, we are a world-leading technology provider, and this is what I started off saying 20 years ago. But it's a question of our technology was developed to power our business applications. At the end of the day, the technology is about the business outcomes. Technology is an enabler for us. We are not a technology company by itself. It's all about developing the right technologies to power the business applications and the business processes. And that's why when we look at this and say the way that SAP approaches machine learning and AI in general, and any of the new generation innovation technologies, is with the business context in mind, with the business outcomes that our customers are expecting. So when I look at this, when I talk about the machine learning, the way that we have attacked and started to consume machine learning is to provide that core foundation enablement. We provide the industry level context. So when we're looking at blockchain, when we're looking at fraud detection in the financial services world, when we look at consumer interaction in our retail world, we look at using the relevant machine learning algorithms and technologies that way. Same goes for within the procurement side in sourcing. So it's the industry context is applied by us. It's not a generalized algorithm out there in terms of what we want to look at it. And the consuming apps, and again, our consuming apps are our business applications. So as I mentioned, things such as in our financial world, the way that we apply cash, it's now available via the automated scenario from a machine learning. So the apps are our business applications themselves. That's really the context from our point of view, is the consuming apps are our business applications. And then the last one there is to bring your own. So we have customers, we have partners. It's definitely got shorter. From point of view, have developed your own machine learning algorithms and perhaps have your own models. So the way that we've architected our solution, our technology stack, is the fact that you can bring your own to and make use of that. So that's the same way that we had, like I mentioned, one of our partners, Deloitte, bought their own machine learning algorithm to model to do the invoice creation from a scanned OC image. Looking a little bit at the details behind this, from the fact that we can now also announce as with Hana 2 Service Pack 4.5, I believe, we can do what's called do native TensorFlow serving. So what this depicts is the fact that within my SAP HANA world, I can make a call out to TensorFlow, pass it the relevant information, and have the inference engine give me back results. And then the other side of this is that we can now, using Data Hub and all the data management tools within SAP HANA, move the relevant data over to GCS, which is cloud storage, which in turn is now used by the CMLE engine, on the tensor processing units, running that, retraining that model, using the on-demand compute power from the TPUs, and updating that new model. So you can have that nice little continuous training functions applied. And you can also, obviously, with this, tune the model as and when you need, depending on that, depending on the data outcomes that you're having. And since this is a dev session, I thought I'd better put a bit of code in there. So this actually is the code to, I don't know if you can see this here, call sys AFL and wrapper procedure. The AFL is our application function library inside HANA. So to show you it is real, this is where it's making that call out to the tensor serving engine. And you're getting back, as you can see here, it's doing a predict. And what it's doing is this version allows you to send in multiple values or an array for prediction. Example use cases, as I mentioned, I think this is going to be key here. This, as I mentioned, I forgot to mention, before I get into the example use cases, as part of the partnership, we've actually developed brand new solutions with Google. First of which is a solution called SAP Data Custodian. And as you can probably imagine, this actually came out of, I would say, Google themselves made it relevant, because in the old ways of where you used to deploy SAP and then other enterprise applications, you would have to deploy in multiple regional instances because of the communications and the segregation duties and all of those things. Now with Google's high-speed interconnects across the globe, you could theoretically have a single instance scenario. But the downside of the single instance scenario, because of GDPR now, is all of the who's got access to what data and why are they doing it that way. So that's the solution that we actually worked with Google, using their technology in terms of access control, lists, and security, and seeing the logging involved at the data, very lowest level, granular level. And what we did is, obviously, we provided, as I mentioned, something that's key to SAP is process and governance. So we provided the governance framework and the management of that data flows and data controls. It's not only about, did you look at it? I can now tell you, did you have the right to look at it with these authorizations? But did you have the right usage base for that use? Because just because you can look at a social security number because you're in payroll, why are you doing this from within another function? So all of those kind of governance frameworks is what SAP is good at, and that's what we've provided. And that's, like I say, I think you saw that on the keynote today with Bernd. First iteration was released, and we're working on that. I'm not sure when the next release level is for the Data Custodian. Another use case that I actually worked with with the Google team for Sapphire was to take a concept of an existing SAP-based flow, which is all about a fashion retailer that requires high-touch interaction with a customer, and seeing if we can now leverage the machine learning algorithms inside the cloud machine learning library engine, in real time to interact with a store associate. So the concept here was that most marketing engines, including SAP's, we can derive a propensity to buy factor. We identify, based on your interactions and your demographics, you probably have a high propensity to buy the particular product. The next one we actually worked with the customer was to kind of like say, well, which channel should I offer this product to the customer via? Who should do it? Should it be interactive? Should it be via social media, etc.? So that's where it became a conversation. And what we ended up doing was to say that, hey, wouldn't it be great if we can actually find a model that allows us to do a prediction. And that model that we actually started with is actually the YouTube recommendation engine. So we actually used that and we tweaked it to create a scenario. And this is what I've just a very short video that I've got. This is to show what we're going to have here is basically this is, oops, sorry. This is the propensity to buy aspect. So we've the CRM system has created a list of products and customers and said, hey, this is what we think. Then the scenario you can see here, what we have on the right-hand side, say assign all. You'll see that when I click on that, it goes out. Now what it's doing is actually, that is a live call that we did to the CMLE engine, where we passed it all and we trained it based on the historical information of the sales information. And then also what we added to that to make the model, better is we actually added in a function, because our assumption going in was, generally speaking, that an associate will probably have a higher success rate selling or offering a product that they personally think is really good and they like. So what we did is we incorporated this scenario where the associates were like, yeah, I like that, oh, I don't like that. So we were using that function now into the training model as in addition to just who sold what in the past historical scenario, to arrive at what we're calling a seller affinity model. And again, and the last part of this is, part of the integration is, we did that, we ran the model, and we're actually trialing it through. And the last part of this is to leverage the SAP Cloud Leonardo Analytics, is to put that, remember on my Hana one, there's a nice feedback loop, right? We wanted to see if what we're suggesting, our hypothesis, is correct. So as we actually run the scenario, we're going to run with the analytics to say, okay, here's all the ML assigned assignments, and here's the assignments that just were fed through as is. So that's really the way that we're looking at extending our capabilities in the workplace for. Oops. This is a conceptual flow of what we did here, just to give you a quick idea. And this is where we're really looking at the ML functions being used in the application tier. The thing that we've got planned for is, as part of those action lists that came out from that affinity model, the fact that we have within the machine learning foundation from the cloud platform, you have the ability to now do resource leveling. You can even factor in not only sell this product to that particular customer, but you can actually now factor in information regarding profitability and pricing. Because we've got access to all of our retail information and inventory information inside Leonardo, now I can provide the call out to the Google engine with additional factors to improve the model result set coming back. I.e., you can tweak the price XYZ because I've got a lot of this in stock, or it's a keep it at full price because everybody in social media is after the same product. So all of those aspects are built in, but we haven't exposed that yet because that's a business use case. That's really the power of what our cloud platform is doing versus just a native call straight out to the Google ML engine. Because we can now provide that business context right there inside. And again, as I mentioned, this is the actual Python that's making the call to that session, because I did say it's a dev session. The other one that I wanted to highlight was we have a solution called the SAP Product Information Network. And it's about having all the material master data attributes about consumer goods. And we created this scenario to say that who's got the best, most likely the image library out there right now, and who actually exposes that image library through an open API called the Vision API. It's Google. So in this scenario, we wanted to say, oh, I like that chair. Take a picture of it. And I know people like Amazon does it right now and gives you kind of like it's a chair, here are all the chairs. But what we did was to find, now match that view extracted the attributes, and then matched it on our product information network to find actual real-life attributes, like the fact that it's got the color, the texture, the cloth material, etc. So it was matching at the business attribute level from our product information network. And that's what this area looks like. As you can see here, we're using quite a few capabilities from the back-end SAP GCP systems. But again, from our point of view, it's not about just the machine learning functions that occur out in the field. It is making sure that we provide the right business context for the the consumption, and then the business process behind it as well. So that was just to give you a brief overview of the key capabilities and what we've done. And I've got in the slides ideas about where to go and do this. Downstairs on level 1, SAP booth, there are a couple of hands-on tutorials where you can actually play around with deploying Hana on GCP, making use of the Android SDK aspects as well. So some of those are all there. And I wanted to know that because this is near drinking time. I want to leave some time for Q&A aspects. So I'm free to take any questions, because like I said, this was introductory. People can find me on LinkedIn if you've got specific questions about what the nuances are about the enabling any of these technologies. I'm absolutely free to help out.